r/NoStupidQuestions. Atlantic Lotion says, I just found out I have aphantasia. How vivid can most people imagine things? I recently had a conversation with a friend about a psychedelic trip years ago. When I closed my eyes I could literally see pictures of my thoughts. My friend laughed and asked, can't you do that sober? This then made me remember all the confusion when a teacher would ask to picture this in your mind or to count sheep. I spent 24 years thinking that meant to conceptually think about what it would be like. Honestly dumbfounded that most people can do this normally. I'm curious how vivid your pictures are for normal people. Is it really like looking at a photograph? Is it just an object, or is there a background? Is it in color? I have since learned it is somewhat like dreaming, but I have only had maybe 5 or 6 dreams in my life, all of which were when I was very young. I can't really remember what dreaming is like. Noggin Scratcher says, it varies a lot between people, and it's a strange thing to try to describe, because it might feel distinctly similar to a visual experience, even while you know you're not really seeing it. For me it usually doesn't overlay my actual visual field, but instead feels like it's an image appearing somehow above/behind my eyes is less vivid than, say, a photograph. Takes some effort to maintain, maybe only one part of the image. The part I'm focusing on is in full detail at any one time, does include color, can include background element if I choose to picture a whole scene, or could be just an object in an otherwise blank void, can be made to move about a bit, for instance. To mentally rotate a third object or to fold up a net of a cube for one of those puzzles where they ask which pictures on the sides end up next to each other, but my understanding is that all of those specifics can differ in other people. Tugan Hiswinky says, this is a good description, thanks for the kindness. Saturn Spagimus says, I experience it this way also. I can also add sound, running water, etc. to the image. For example, while reading your description I pictured a large oak tree at a park, included the grass and a bench, then added chirping birds and a running river. I could see this slightly behind my eyes and above my line of sight, and could add or remove details instantly without any effort. If I don't intentionally add foreground or background details, my brain will usually try to add those also, unless I'm specifically trying to picture one item, like a plain cube that would have a white background in my mind. Stuprex says, wait, you're telling me that most people can see realistic pictures of things in their head with their eyes closed? Well, I just learned something sad about myself, and I'm a lot older than you. r/NoStupidQuestions. Jess5946 says, if there are so many bots on social media now, what the hell was the point of Captchas? Chiffon420 says, Captchas were first started to stop the bots, but then they became a training tool for bots/AI. What doesn't destroy you makes you stronger. Concise Pirate says, click on all the squares. That would make you buy more McDonald's fries. Concise Pirate says, they worked for a while. They stopped working. Jess5946 says, oh damn. That sucks. Then why do we even still have them anymore? I don't like having to guess if 1/12 of a bicycle tire being in the tile counts as that tile containing a bicycle like 12 times in a row lol. One cat took a tread cat bluket says, now that I think about it, I haven't seen one in a long time. Petwin says, they stop the dumber bots. Matatonist says, Captchas are mainly used to gather data for machine learning models. Anonymous Koala 1 says, just 'cause something stops working doesn't mean it never worked ever. Especially with computer tech. r/NoStupidQuestions. Vanessa Burskus says, in Christian belief, if someone hasn't been exposed to Christianity and thus doesn't believe in God, they aren't condemned to hell. Does this imply that spreading Christianity might potentially expose more people to the risk of damnation? Field Warlock says, an interesting question. Yes, by spreading Christianity you are at risk of increasing the amount of people who are at risk for damnation, if that is what you believe, but you need to think about the reasons you may be inclined to spread Christianity as well. Some people don't follow the belief that simply not knowing damns souls to hell, and for them, spreading it only increases the possibility that others may get into heaven or escape damnation. There are many people out there who do not take ignorance as an escape from sin and see the spreading of Christianity as only a positive. OKNT7360 says, in Christian belief, if someone hasn't been exposed to Christianity and thus doesn't believe in God, they aren't condemned to hell. This is not true. Source: Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. OK Nefariousness 6386 says, hell is a human concept. When Jesus went to hell it was a crappy place. During the first millennia, hell was a cold place. At some point during the second millennia, someone at the Vatican smoked crack and decided hell was a hot place. Confutatis maledictus. Warren Michaels says, that's not quite accurate. According to the Bible, non-believers go to hell. That's it. Whether they had ever even heard of the Christian God or not, doesn't matter. This doesn't sit right with some people. Why should people be punished for not accepting God when they went their whole life never having even heard of him? So some people propose that, since it really isn't their fault or within their control, there's no way they could be held accountable. And so you can only be punished for actively rejecting God. That, of course, introduces the other problem, the one you're asking about. r/NoStupidQuestions. Kachan says, how do I politely tell a group member to at least mute her microphone if she's not participating in the group work? I'm taking an online class where there's sometimes group work to do. We are 5 in our group, 4 of which are actively participating. Mambo, no. 5 is not. She does however regularly unmute herself while she chats with someone at home. I don't particularly mind her not helping, we are all grown-ups, and it's her problem if she doesn't want to learn, but how do I tell her to at least shut the frick up? Politely. Finbo13 says, lot of background noise there. Can you mute your mic please? Kerfoldery says, this is when it's good to be the meeting host. Just click mute on that disruptor and keep them muted lol. Kalakilpanen says, depending on the app you may be able to mute others, even if you aren't the host. At least Teams allows you to mute anyone in a meeting without telling them who did it. Karma Carmelan says, is this a trick question? Number 5, put yourself on mute please repeat as necessary. Chefbury says, no but like how, do you actually say that? /s. Alarma Geologist 2681 says, start the meeting by saying, can everyone mute their mic when they are not speaking? And if Mambo doesn't do it, you immediately call them out specifically, oh, Mambo, your mic sounds like it's still on. Could you please mute it? The other method is to not be polite at all, and when they start talking to someone else and just loudly and directly call them out. Also group projects are trash and have nothing to do with real life or working in the real world. Everybody just stop. r/NoStupidQuestions. Tineon Fredia Male says, if it's Frankenstein's monster, then why is the female Bride of Frankenstein? So if Frankenstein is actually called Frankenstein's monster, because apparently Frankenstein was the doctor that made him, then why is the bride referred to as Bride of Frankenstein? The bride is apparently the spouse of the monster, but the phrasing would imply they are married to the doctor. I'm so confused. Screenaholic says, multiple things here. 1. The phrase "The Bride of Frankenstein" comes from the classic horror movie of the same name, the sequel to the movie Frankenstein. Those movies are very not accurate to the novel. They do refer to the monster as Frankenstein, and are where the image of him being green with bolts in his neck come from. 2. When people say Frankenstein is the doctor, not the monster, they're actually wrong for multiple reasons. Victor Frankenstein was not a doctor in the novel, he was a college dropout. B. The monster referred to Victor as his father, and if Victor was his father, then they would share the same last name. So the monster is Frankenstein. 3. The monster's bride was never finished in the novel. Victor built her, but before bringing her to life he became scared that they might have monster offspring, so he destroyed her at the last minute. 4. Frankenstein is public domain, so anyone can write any version of the story they want. So Victor may or may not be a doctor, the monster may or may not be named Frankenstein, and he may or may not have a bride, depending on the story you're reading. Beamerpux says, "I think I'm in love with you, but I'm not sure why." Screenaholic says, "It wouldn't be the first time my language arts knowledge made someone fall in love with me." Dramatic Reply 3973 says, "I guess the monster took his father's, creator's, surname." Kranusa says, "Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein's bride. He made them both." Orphelusaname 123 says, "The Bride of Frankenstein is not from the original book, though there is a part where the creature wants Frankenstein to make him a mate, so the name follows the common practice of erroneously referring to the creature as Frankenstein." Zesticlos Cap 1829 says, "Frankenstein is the last name of the insane doctor. He didn't even finish Evil Medical School, who created the monster. Yes. The monster, Adam, thinks of himself as Drive. Frankenstein's son, so he took his last name, making him Adam Frankenstein. Dad Frankenstein made a lady monster. I don't really want to think too hard about what his thought processes were around this. To be his, Adam Frankenstein's, bride. That help?" That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.